All right, hello everyone, and welcome to another weekly edition of Stock Market Mutterings. This is for the week beginning on the 6th of May. Hope everyone is doing well. This is where I'll do my best to try to find you some quality trade setups for the week and put some money in your pocket. As always, if you guys need help with your personal trading, I'm going to post a link right there on the screen. Click it or cut and paste it. It will guide you directly to our live trade room, and you can start trading with us right away. So today, what I want to do is I want to welcome you to San Angeles. Now, if you guys can remember the old Demolition Man movie, that was the name of the city, and that's where all the cars drove themselves. There was no crime. The weather was perfect every day. It was like Pleasantville. It was the greatest and most non-surprising city. They lived with no surprises and no fear. That's how I'm going to describe this market right now. There is absolutely zero fear. And maybe that turns out to be a bad thing. Who knows? But the way that this thing is operating, you just can't see a sell-off that lasts longer than a day. Like we had this tiny blip after the Fed where there was like a smidge, like a little smudge of concern where it sold off like a day and a half. So that's like the new bear market is a day and a half. Now, all kidding aside, at some point, that type of behavior, that type of activity will change, will stop. Far be it for me to decide what day that's going to be. I can only look at the clues. But for right now, just to kind of cut to the chase, I mean, anything that gives you a slight red open that's not hit from earnings. Let's take earnings losers out of the way. And even those. And anything that gives you a little bit of a red or a little start to the day that begins with some selling has more often than not, I'd say 95% of the time, it's a buy. It will eventually find its way to turn green. And you can't get any kind of consistent follow through with anything. So until we see some changes for that, why should we expect anything different? How can we expect anything different? Because we've had bad news. There have been earning disappointments. There have been guide lower. There have been decreased earnings and revenues and slowdown in revenues, but it hasn't stopped the way this market has been working. And we're like 17% for the year. So who knows how long this is going to last. As I sit here again, you're ready for yet again another breakout. Now, if you are trying to make the bear case and you're saying, hey, when will we see something like that? What would be the clues? First of all, you'd have to see something that lasted longer than a day. Like if you could put together a couple of days and get down into some areas and be void of quick instant rallies, then maybe you've got something there that you should be concerned about. And someday that's going to happen. It's not like we're not going to see that at some point this year. It's not going to be like years and years of this. We're not living in San Angeles right now, but pay attention to the 20 moving average. There was just a spot right there after the Fed. You started to get down in there where there was kind of like a glimmer of maybe, but it didn't stay down. You know, it comes right back up storming on Friday. And look, when it hit the bottom spot right there early in the morning on Thursday, the thing didn't do anything but just basically grind back up step by step, offering zero volatility and practically no pullbacks. So until you start seeing closes underneath of the 20 moving average, which right now would be in the 288s, 287s, then maybe you can work your way just a little bit lower. And when I'm saying a pullback, I'm not necessarily saying we're going to see a market correction, but to come off of some of these high levels would be nice. I think you got to get a period here where the market back tests some of this, but we've been saying that since Christmas Eve and you really haven't seen it. So who knows when it will stop. Take it for what it's worth. So what we want to do right here is look at some different type of trading opportunities and a few different setups. One here is WUBA. I want you guys to take a look at this chart. I'm going to show you a few that look like this. And this just has been one of the solid trades besides dip buys, is anything that busts through a range level on the daily chart seems to just, number one, it seems when it gets close, they just want to run it right into that number. And then when it gets there, it just blows right through it. Take a look at BABA, BABA, for example. But WUBA right here is setting up a pretty solid flag. You can see you've got kind of a triple top there going through the month of April. You have a little bit of resistance going back into, I think this is later part of February, early March. It just looks like this thing's going to clean out this 72.69 right here. So I would think that if you get a press through 72.69, you will probably trade somewhere up into these 74s, maybe even 80s. Who knows? I've seen crazier things in this market, but a pretty tight and a pretty clean setup. And not just that, it's one that looks like it has a little bit more range to give to the upside. A lot of times when you see these, the stock has already made a massive run of $30 a share. So you're already kind of chasing a little bit, but you've got a good piece of consolidation and you've got an awful lot of void up here that you can fill anywhere between 80 and 85 for swing traders. So just watch this WUBA. If the market continues to stay this way, I would expect that you see a little bit more of this thing to the upside. Now you could put Facebook right here. You know, they're doing really well on taking your data, selling it without your permission, and all that kind of good stuff. But it's just another chart. It continues to shrug off anything that comes its way too. And you've had earnings. Here's a pretty good play for some of you that are learning technical analysis, or some of you that want to add something else to your repertoire. Is anytime these earnings gap up huge on these stocks, a lot of times they just don't become attractive because they run up so much in one day, it's hard to justify getting any kind of upside. So you need sometimes a little bit of back testing, which is a pullback, or you need some sort of consolidation or a moment or a period to digest those gains. And you've got that here. It's just kind of pulled back down into its opening gap. It's held that for a few days. And you just need to see a nice clean break of 198. If you can get up here towards the earnings highs and through that, I think this is probably going to go right to 202, which is the 200-day moving average, and possibly going right back to, you can see I've already drawn the arrow, back to all-time highs of 217 to 220s. Maybe not all, obviously not all in one day, likely. But I would expect, again, just like you saw with WUBA, there's a little bit of a void to fill here above the earnings high and where this thing was trading at its all-time high on the 25th of July. So just kind of keep this one up here. Look for the aggressiveness of how the dips get bought. And then if at some point it breaks that level, I'd look for a little bit more aggression to come into this stock. Now, another one to kind of give you an example of what it may look like, excuse me, is LULU. Again, another one that just keeps finding its way. But I want to go back and I want to show for some of you who are trying to learn these charts and trying to understand what it is I'm looking at and what I'm saying with Facebook. You kind of saw this in LULU. You go back to this date right here on the 28th of March. You had your earnings gap, which was humongous. I mean, this thing gaps up from 146 to 17. I mean, it's just humongous move. And it needs a little bit of time to digest it. So you see it kind of pulls back, builds a nice little base, and then starts to break out again. And you get this nice move, albeit a slow one, but you get this nice, consistent, solid move that yields from 168 to 178. So you get this second gear on that. That's what you're kind of looking at Facebook. Now that brings us back to where this one's sitting, and it looks as if it has digested yet again that move and is ready to make possibly another $5 to $10 move. You know, again, if the market doesn't change, I don't see why this one would change. Whether they're overbought, whether these numbers can be justified, that's not really up for us to decide right now. For the short term, I don't see anything changing. I'd like to see it change, but it's not. So we got to kind of roll with the punches here. You do have earnings on this one coming up in the next, by the end of the month, so it's not really that much of an emergency. But watch LULU. It looks like it's ready to make another breakout. Now, even though I said over the last couple that shorting has just not been where the real value is, you can't turn your back completely because you just never know when something's going to happen. I know I talk about this thing all the time. I hope somebody has bought it because I just stare at it like it's the Mona Lisa or something in amazement. This shop is living in its own planet. It's got its own like Milky Way system. It just, I mean, God, if you would have bought some of this on Christmas Eve and slipped into a coma and woke up today, you'd be rich. I mean, this thing was $120. Now you're at $264. And since its earnings, it's just gone stupid stupid vertical. I've had a couple of decent successes this week with some shorts. I was fortunate enough to get them timed just right, and they turned out to be pretty good. One was like a $4 winner, so eventually that dip got bought back up, obviously, as you see closing Friday at highs. But you still got to kind of look at this thing here. There's a couple of different ways you may want to play it. I'm looking at anything that goes vert, anything that presses range, which is like $6 to $7 to the upside. I'll look for areas off of whole numbers to try some small pieces of day trade shorts. However, when you look at something like this with an enormously stretched RSI on the daily, and it's not like this thing is just coming off the bottom here, and it's not like it wasn't already up 100 a share before this rally, it starts to look possibly as maybe a swing short for some of you out there that are not doing the day by day trade. And if you were going to do something like this, I think your best way to go is to look at options, like maybe picking up some puts, maybe out into June or July. Give yourself a little bit of time on that. By doing that, that will allow you not just to have leverage, but it'll keep you away from the risk associated with what if it doesn't stop? What if it goes to 300? You just don't get your account murdered. You can put some sort of low risk, high reward play. Now, the reason I bring that up is just like I had yodeled endlessly on Christmas Eve that week about now's probably a good time to start getting your feet wet with picking up the dip. When it looks like there's no end in sight, that normally means there is an end coming real soon. And you just can't ignore this. And there comes these times where risk versus reward, you just simply have got to take a shot. If you're in this business to make money, you got to take a shot. And then you look at something like this that's up that much. One small pullback is like $10. I mean, a good fade on this thing, it could fade $20 and the chart would still be bullish. I mean, the 20-day moving average on this thing is 221. So it's trading right now. I can't even do the math. It's so far. What is it? Yeah, 40 some dollars, $40 above its 20-day moving average. I mean, hella overbought. Hella overbought. If you look up overbought in the dictionary, you'll see shop. You'll see it. What are you going to say? If you guys are long-term holders of this, congrats to you. I'm not, so I got to look at the other side here. So anyway, kind of take some of those and see if any of them can make you money. As always, if you need help, take a moment, visit thelinkonthis.com, click on the Trade Room tab, or cut and paste that link from earlier. Trade well this week, guys. I'll chat with everyone next week. Take care.